Welcome. We're going to solve an equation where right now there are variables on both sides, but this time we are specifically going to justify or explain why we did each step. So when this kind of thing is requested or required, you start off literally by saying for the beginning something along the lines of original problem. So that's what we're doing. Now, when you look at it, you know enough math to know that you have a couple options here. We can combine the variables or we combine the numbers. We'll have to do both, but let's do one thing here or another. So what I want to do is I want for number 2 here, I don't want the work finished. What I want is to state what it is that we're about to do. So notice I don't rewrite the 4x and 2x part. I put the plus 3 because of the fact that I'm going to use that to make 0 there. This is called the addition property of equality. But on a practical basis, it can simply be said, add 3 to both sides. And that's acceptable if you don't remember the name of the property. The third step is where we simplify it by actually doing that plus 3 on both sides, which gives us 4x equals 2x plus 8. Now that we have that, we'll do another step, but just like this step here was showing what the step was going to be, that's what we're going to do on the next one. So on the next one, I see that I have x's on both sides and I want to get the x's together. So if I subtract 2x from here, that will make this 0, and I'll get 2x on the other side. So this one is the subtraction property of equality. But we can also say that it's subtract 2x from both sides. It could actually be said differently because in reality, subtraction is just something we've constructed. It's not actually true. It doesn't exist. It's not, well, true is the wrong word. It doesn't exist as a separate thing. Subtracting is actually adding an opposite number. So it's adding negative 2x to both sides. Now, in reality for us, subtract makes sense in our minds and it works well to solve with. So although it's like a construct or a little trick that we play on our minds, it works. And it probably works better than always adding the opposite of something. So saying subtract 2x is perfectly fine. I just wanted to throw that in as an extra little thing to understand that subtract really doesn't actually exist. It actually is adding the opposite. The same is true with division. Division is not really something that exists. What it is multiplying an inverse. But we'll get to that another time. Oh, in fact, we'll get to that pretty soon. Okay. So here, 4x minus 2x is 2x, and that equals 8. And this is simplified. So we're simplifying by doing the minus 4x minus 2x and 2x minus 2x plus 8. Okay, now this next part, we're going to divide both sides by 2. And that will help us get the x by itself. Now that can be called the division property of equality. Notice that all of the official names are with equality, and that's because you're doing it on both sides. You're keeping the two sides equal. Now this can also though be said as simply divide both sides by 2. By 2. And to be completely technically correct, I would say multiply by the inverse of 2, which is 1/2. But Nah, divide makes more sense to our brains, so we're going to use that. So now I'm going to simplify again. And so we get x equals 4, and there's nothing more to do. That is the answer. And at this point, that means, well, I want to put the slash. I want to say simplify, semicolon, and answer. All right, you have seen this lesson. You know now that I want you to do this where you write out what happens. You know, it's like what happens, or yeah, what you're going to do, what you're going to do, and what you're going to do. And then the next one is to simplify. After that, you simplify. Make sure you do these lines like that. Make sure you do that, or else I will not accept it as correct. Must do. So you must do the extra little thing that, you know, what it is that you're going to be here. In fact, I think I'll do a half. We did the +3, we did the -2x, we did divided by 2. And then you use the word simplify. So make sure that you memorize that word. Now we'll come back to another one of these in just a moment, but now let's take a look at if we do this and we get a couple of special variations. So in this first variation, without writing out and justifying each step, let's just go ahead and solve it. We have two terms that are similar here, so we'll put those together. Okay, so I'm going to add 3 here. Negative 6x equals 6 minus 6x. Let's add 6x here and add 6x here, and we get 0 equals 6, which is not true. Check every step, make sure you did everything correctly. And what that means then is that there is, get back up here, no solution. That is the best answer. You can also say null set, which is no solution, or write it in brackets with nothing inside it, or the null set in it. But this is the best way to answer it. And you'll notice your textbook does that, and I would prefer that you follow that example. Okay, now on the last one, let's do another one. It's very similar, except for one difference. Step 3 is negative, so watch what happens. So we're going to do negative 6x minus 3 by combining those x's equals negative 3 minus 6x. And you might already see what happened. If I add 3 to both sides, I get negative 6 equals negative 6x. I add 6x to both sides, I get 0 equals 0. That's a true statement. So this one's true. This one was false, which leads to no solution. But if it's true, that means all possible numbers work. And this is where you say infinitely many solutions, which is the best answer, or infinite solutions could be accepted. Or you say all real numbers, or there's a symbol used for all real numbers. So all numbers that exist. So it's not imaginary numbers like square root of negative something, but rather any possible number, actual real number that exists. If you were to put it in for these x's, the same number in for all of them, you would get that the two sides are equal. Everything would cancel out. Or you would end up something like 5 equals 5, or 48 equals 48, or negative 300 million equals negative 300 million. It would still be true. And the opposite's true for this one up here. You can put the same thing in for x. Any number, there is any single number that exists, you can put in there, and it will never work out where the two sides are equal. So that's why that's no solution, because it's not possible to get one. Here, any number can be used, and there's an infinite amount of numbers. So those are the exceptions or variations, but those are going to happen quite a lot in your math career. So you want to be very aware of that. And then back up here with these now. Remember, there were steps to do and then the reasons. And this is ones when, and actually, even if we did this and we got 0 equals 0, then we would say we would simplify and answer equals equals infinitely many solutions or something like that, but we would still do all the same steps, the same justifying. All right, now let's do a practice one. What I'm going to do is draw a line, make this paper smaller, and I'm going to draw a line down here, and I'm going to open this up again. All right, so I'm going to do this as a practice problem. And I'm going to write this out. And if you are following this, then write this out because I'm going to give you some time to do it yourself. 3, 2x minus 7. And so I am going to ask you to now write down, in fact, this one is original problem. And then I want you underneath it to put down what you're about to do and state it and then simplify. So that means this one will be simplify. And then keep going. I am going to suggest that you stop your video for a moment, work this whole thing out, and then come back and see me do it. And so I'm going to stop talking for just about 3 seconds so you can stop it. And when you start it again, I will begin the problem. All right. The first thing that I see in here is I see that this has parentheses, both of them. And there's a number multiplying in front of it. That means the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply that 2 times both of these and 3 times both of these. Now I could have written in here the whole thing over again and then done the arrow kind of thing, and that would have been an acceptable way to show it also. But doing this, when you multiply the 2 and the 3 into them, that means we're using the distributive property. Distributive property. And that's one of the terms that everybody should know, so you can write distributive property. And then simplifying it, we're actually going to do the numbers. So 2 times 8 gives us 16x plus the 4 equals, and I never put an equal there, so let's do it, 6x minus 21. Now, and I actually shouldn't have written simplify until I had actually written that out so I can have them together. A little arrow and simplify. Now it becomes very much like that other problem that we had done a moment ago. And I'm going to do minus 4 and minus 4. And I'm going to call that subtract 4 from both sides. And then I'm going to simplify it. 16x equals 6x minus 25. We'll simplify. Okay. And now I see I have x's on both sides, so I will do this. Now some people would do this step and this step at the same time. In this kind of a context, don't do that. Don't do them at the same time. Do them as separate steps because they need separate explanations. And so we do them on separate lines. Okay, so just don't. No matter how quick you are and smart you are and fast you are in math or want to do it, don't do it. Not on this. There's a different context, so follow the context. All right, so we're going to subtract 6x from both sides. And then we're going to simplify. That gives us 10x equals negative 25. Now simplify. And then we want the x by itself, so I'm going to divide by 10. Or I can do it like putting the 10 underneath it now, like that. And it's going to be divide both sides by 10. Or multiply both sides by the inverse, which is 1/10. And then we're going to simplify. So it's going to be x is equal to negative 2.5. And that's actually the answer. Not required the right answer, but it sure does make sense to do it, or to say it. That's part of what we did. That means the answer is negative 2.5, and I'm hoping that you got that plus these, all of the justifications correct as well. I hope that helps. Thank you for watching and listening.